Good afternoon. And welcome to the 7th and final session of the America's Role in the World Conference. My name is Lucy Brown, and I am the president of IU's Zeta Gamma chapter of Sigma Iota Rho, the Professional Honor Society for SGIS. I'm a senior international studies major with concentrations in global health in Latin America. Next year, I plan to conduct research on Zika virus in Lima, Peru as a Fulbright scholar, and then attend IU School of Medicine in fall of 2019. The education that I've received through SGIS has been truly invaluable. I've been able to study domestic violence in the Dominican Republic and then apply my research abroad into my senior capstone class here. As president of Sigma Iota Rho, I've been able to plan professional events for our members, such as an overseas study forum, a returned Peace Corps volunteer panel discussion, a networking night, and a language fair, thereby enabling students to capitalize on their SGIS experience as I have. More than anything, I've made lifelong connections with the faculty, staff, and students within the school, connections that I'm confident will persist long after I graduate. This entire conference has been made possible thanks to the vision of President Michael McRobbie in founding this school. Michael McRobbie has served as president of Indiana University since 2007. He previously served as IU's Vice President for Information Technology and Chief Information Officer, as Vice President for Research, and as Interim Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs for IU Bloomington. Under McRobbie's leadership as president, IU has seen a reinvigoration of the global partnerships that support the university's international academic programs. Nowhere is that more apparent than in this building. President McRobbie is a native of Australia and holds a PhD from the Australian National University. He is a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. It is an honor to have him here today, and my pleasure to introduce him to you.
Well, thank you very much, Lucy. Appreciated the introduction. As this third annual conference on America's role in the world draws to a close, I want to just take this opportunity to thank all of the speakers, the panelists, and attendees for being part of what I'm sure everybody who's been attending the sessions will agree has been a really superb conference that sets the bar even higher for the conference next year. And this annual conference, now in its third year, has really become an extraordinary opportunity for IU students, faculty, and staff to hear from leading foreign policy experts, as we just did before, as they address some of the most pressing international challenges facing not only our country, but also the world. We heard earlier some really wonderful remarks from Samantha Power, the former US Ambassador to the United Nations. And we also heard today from US Senator for Indiana, Todd Young, who was part of a sobering but cautiously hopeful discussion about global food security with Senator Richard Lugar and others as well. I want to thank Senator Lugar and Congressman Hamilton, who has also spoken at the conference, and both of whom are distinguished scholars and professors of practice in the School of Global and International Studies, for helping to convene this conference and for the very important and vital role and impact that they are both having on this conference as well. And I do want to strongly commend Dean Feinstein and all of the faculty and staff of the school who have worked to make this annual conference, and of course this new school and this wonderful new building, such a resounding success. At Indiana University, we are proud of the leading role that we play in the States and in America's international engagement. We live, as all of you are acutely aware, in increasingly difficult times when strident voices would shut us off from the rest of the world, just at a time when the need to understand it and engage with it is at its most acute and its most urgent. American universities must play a central role in combating xenophobic stereotypes, willful ignorance about the broader world, and calls for isolationism, all of which can have and result in dire consequences. They have the opportunity to play this role since there are probably no American institutions more widely admired and respected internationally than its great research universities. This has been repeatedly confirmed to me on my visits as IU president now to 35 countries around the globe, and in meetings in these countries with hundreds of universities and government agencies, and with thousands of IU alums and others as well. It is quite fitting, in fact, that universities have such a central role in countering calls for isolationism and disengagement. Universities, after all, have always been truly international institutions, open to the world and attracting the very best and most able from countries around the globe. For example, here at Indiana University, like so many other great research universities, over 20% of our faculty are foreign born, including even the president of the university. The pages of the histories of all great universities of the past are a record of this, with names from every part of the then known world. Key to Indiana University's engagement with the world is the international literacy and experience that comprises an IU education. The world in which our students will live will require more, not less, knowledge about the world. We seek to foster this in a number of key ways. By requiring a mandatory international component for every student as part of their IU education. Through a major increase in the number of our students who study abroad. Over the past 10 years, we have seen nearly a doubling in the number of IU students who study abroad, with now more than a third of all graduating IU Bloomington students having studied abroad. In fact, IU Bloomington now ranks 7th in the nation out of about 1,200 universities ranked in terms of the number of students who study abroad. And given the size of our graduating class, that is a very large number of students indeed. And we do it through welcoming a large and diverse international student body who now come from over 150 different countries, and they bring the world to IU. And when they return to their home countries, they become, for the rest of their lives, passionate alumni and staunchly pro-American. The IU Bloomington campus currently ranks 19th in the country in terms of the number of international students enrolled. And we do it through global alumni engagement. We now have around 50 international chapters of IU's Alumni Association. These are kind of like our embassies overseas. And we do it by building strong and active partnerships with some of the best foreign universities in the world. We have about 200 of these partnerships. And we do it through the study of languages, histories, cultures, religions, politics, economies, institutions, art, and literature of other countries. Enhancing IU's strengths in these areas was one of the major motivations for the establishment of the School of Global and International Studies. And the school builds, of course, on IU's formidable resources in language study. We teach over 70 foreign languages, more than any other university in the country, and of course on IU's historic strengths in area studies. Our goal is to ensure that IU is a centre for the world's leading scholars and practitioners in global and international studies, and to support our internationally engaged faculty. And we foster IU's international engagement through the establishment of IU's Global Gateway offices to help focus and concentrate our activities in key regions of the world. We now have 3 of these offices, one in Beijing, one in Berlin, which covers Europe, and one in New Delhi. And in May, I will have the great pleasure of formally dedicating and opening our newest Gateway office in Mexico City. And others will follow in the next few years. So soon, in Herman Wells's words, the sun will never set on IU. That idea is a most fitting lead-in to a panel on Indiana's role in the world. Last year, during the Indiana in the World panel at this conference, I had the privilege of hosting a conversation with Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb. Indiana is privileged to have in Governor Holcomb, as I'm sure people realize who were at the interview I did with him last year, a leader who really does understand the importance of international engagement and the impact that it can have on the Hoosier State's businesses, culture, education, the arts, the non-profit sector, and beyond. And Governor Holcomb is demonstrating his commitment to international engagement, in part by working very energetically to attract foreign direct investment in the state with all of the economic and cultural benefits that that brings. Just last week, the importance of global engagement to Indiana was underscored by Roberto Salinas Leon, the head of the Mexico Business Forum, when he delivered the 7th annual Patrick O'Meara International Lecture on campus, and I'm sure some of you were at that as well. He pointed out that Mexico is Indiana's second largest trading partner. Last year, Indiana exported more than $5 billion worth of Hoosier-made goods and products to Mexico. And IU's growing engagement in Mexico has resulted in a significant increase in the number of Mexican students studying at IU, the exchange of many other students and scholars from IU to Mexico, and a productive new partnership with the National Autonomous University of Mexico called UNAM, which is actually one of the finest universities in Latin America, and the opening of the soon-to-be opening of IU's 4th Global Gateway office, which will actually be established on the UNAM campus in Mexico City. And the importance of this global engagement to Indiana was again underscored last year when I led an IU delegation to Japan to expand our partnerships with a number of Japan's leading universities and companies. We arrived on the heels of the publication of a newspaper article by the former Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs of Japan, Mitoji Yamanaka, in which he referred to Indiana as the most pro-Japanese state in America. To support this claim in his article, he cited the fact that many major Japanese companies, including Honda, Subaru, and Toyota, and many other automotive component companies, have invested heavily in the Hoosier state and in its workforce. In fact, there are over 300 Japanese companies with facilities both large, like those automotive assembly companies, and smaller. And in fact, Indiana has among the largest number of Japanese-based investments in facilities and companies in the state of any state in the country. And of course, Indiana's thriving partnerships with Japan and Mexico are but 2 examples of our state's fruitful global partnerships. As part of our final panel at this year's conference, you will hear from a number of eminent leaders of our state about how Indiana interacts with the world and how global events and forces impact the Hoosier state. I want to thank our panelists for being here with us this afternoon, and we'll be very pleased to welcome a member of the IU Board of Trustees, a leader of one of the Hoosier state's great cities, a member of Governor Holcomb's administration who is working to help Indiana attract and retain the talent needed to compete successfully in the global tech-based economy, and the leader of an Indianapolis-based foundation whose mission is to expand student access in and success in education beyond high school. And now to introduce this afternoon's panelists in greater detail and to reveal their names, please join me in welcoming the panel's moderator, the Provost of the Bloomington campus, Executive Vice President of Indiana University, Lauren Robel.
Well, let me add my thanks to those of President McRobbie, to everyone at the school who has been so engaged in putting this phenomenal conference together. And if I could invite our panelists up, I'll sit right here and I'll invite you to the stage and let me introduce you as you come on up. Well, this panel has become a tradition in the short period of this particular conference. The conference itself has become a hallmark of the campus and the spring semester in the short history of the School of Global and International Studies. And the School of Global and International Studies has become a centerpiece of our campus in so many ways. So I thank the Dean and I thank all the participants in the conference. And I thank our participants on this panel. Let me introduce them and then I'll join them and we'll have a conversation that brings the questions of international relations and foreign policy that we've been discussing for the last 2 days home to our state. And I'll start with Karen Freeman-Wilson. Karen Freeman-Wilson was first elected mayor of Gary, Indiana in 2011, making her that city's first woman mayor and the first African-American woman mayor in the state. Her impressive career of public service has included 10 years as presiding judge of the Gary City Court, Indiana Attorney General, Executive Director of the Indiana Civil Rights Commission, and CEO of the National Association of Drug Court Professionals. As mayor of Gary, she has led a number of initiatives to revitalize the city's neighborhoods and workforce, including the Gary Project in partnership with the University of Chicago. And I know that she's here straight from Canada, so thank you for joining us today. Jamie Merisotis has served as president and CEO of Lumina Foundation since 2008, where he's been a leader in expanding opportunities in post-secondary education for people of all ages and backgrounds. He previously served as president and co-founder of the Institute for Higher Education Policy in Washington, and is currently a member of the Council on Foreign Relations in New York. His 2015 book, America Needs Talent, explores the need for coordinated effort among government, the private sector, and educators to prepare America's workforce for success in the modern global economy. Blair Milo is making a return appearance, but she has changed jobs since she was here last year. Secretary Milo is Indiana's first Secretary of Career Connections and Talent, a cabinet-level position to which she was appointed by Governor Holcomb in 2017. Prior to that, she was twice elected mayor of LaPorte, Indiana in 2011 and 2015. Secretary Milo is a veteran of the United States Navy, serving as an active duty officer for 2 Persian Gulf deployments and later as a reserve officer. She serves on the Board of Governors for the Richard G. Lugar Excellence in Public Service series and on the Indiana Advisory Alliance for the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition. She was most recently on the Bloomington campus as the keynote speaker at the conference hosted last week by Indiana University's Center of Excellence for Women in Technology. And thank you so much for doing that, Secretary Milo. And finally, Jim Morris, who is the vice chairman of Pacer Sports and Entertainment and a trustee of Indiana University since 2013. He served as chief of staff for then mayor of Indianapolis, Richard Lugar, from 1967 to 1973, and he has had a distinguished career in business, in philanthropy, and in public service in our state and throughout the world. And he's done this while constantly pursuing public service in all sectors. Jim has served as president of the Lilly Endowment, executive director for the United Nations World Food Program, National Advisory Board member for the Boy Scouts of America, treasurer for the U.S. Olympic Committee, and chair of the Riley Children's Foundation. So, as I'm thinking about what unites you all, other than your love of our state, it occurred to me that you have all been intensively involved in talent, in thinking about talent development for a global economy. Jamie, you personally have been a champion of twin strategies around higher education and credentialing and immigration. Karen, you've looked at this issue as an urban mayor. Blair, not only as mayor of a regional city, but now I think your new secretariat really is about exactly that issue. And Jim is the trustee of a Big Ten university. So I'd like to just start with an open-ended question. What tools does Indiana as a state have to deploy to stay globally competitive in attracting talent?
Well, I'll start. First, I just want to thank President McRobbie and the Dean, as well as the conveners, Representative Hamilton and Senator Lugar, for the opportunity to join this august panel. I could sit in the audience and be really fascinated, but and certainly to reunite with an old friend, and certainly a mayor that I started with, who's gone on to bigger and better things, and then to our trustee, as well as the head of the Lumina Foundation. You know, one of the things is quite obvious, and because we're sitting here in such a phenomenal institution, and that is that we have world-class educational institutions. And not just IU, obviously you're gonna say that because you're here, but all over the state, large and small. Institutions, whether it is a research institution or whether it is a small private university, we have schools that prepare the leaders of tomorrow and prepare them in so many areas and in so many arenas. And I think that's important. I also believe that we have an environment that really nurtures that type of thinking and that type of leadership. Now, what do I mean by that? For the most part in Indiana, we don't always get sidetracked by some of the divisive issues that we see both in our country and in other places. We are not as partisan, although there are partisan times. You know, the last day of the General Assembly was a pretty partisan day. But for the most part, we don't have that partisanship that tends to allow people to be so polarized. And I think that comes as a result of leadership, and that's leadership from both parties. And so I think those two factors, and I'll just stop there, really do put us in a position to not only educate talent, but also to encourage that talent to contribute to the state. One of the areas that we've been challenged in is the level of education at the K-12 level. And I think that, you know, sort of jeopardizes our efforts, but certainly those other two factors have been a real plus for us as a state.
And I'll follow on with that, I want to echo Mayor Karen's sentiments that is such a treat for me to be able to be back here and share in the conversations with students and with faculty. And so thank you to Dean Feinstein, to President McRobbie for all of your amazing work in putting together this conference and the chance for us to interact with one another, and for me to work with some folks and chat with some folks that I have tremendous respect for, with Senator Lugar, Representative Hamilton, and then peers in this space of career connections and talent, which is the new focus that I have the great opportunity to really delve further into. And I will share that I have Jamie Merisotis' book at the ready in our office as a great playbook. Highly recommend to folks as we're looking at various concepts, tools, programs, as we're connecting people up with talent programs. And Mayor Karen's been an amazing colleague and neighbor, and have so much respect for Mr. Morris and the tremendous leadership you've provided to our state. And as we look at tools that Indiana has to offer, that even listening now to Mayor Karen, it takes me beyond even specific programmatic aspects to thinking somewhat theoretical, but really manifests itself in a great opportunity, and that is the collaborative environment that exists across the state that is so valuable but is often overlooked as we sometimes take for granted those opportunities. And when we think about how we're going to address tough challenges like drawing large numbers of people to our state and connecting up with a workforce and with labor that is changing faster than we've ever seen it change in the past. And what's enabling us to be able to take advantage of new opportunities as they're evolving is then that collaboration across educational institutions with local leaders, with economic development entities, as we are all seeing what different roles that we can each play in this space as we are helping connect organic Hoosiers up with opportunity as that's changing, and recruiting and attracting new Hoosiers to the new jobs that are growing across the state. And that's a great opportunity that I have loved being able to delve further into, of seeing how those relationships are growing across the state and creating tremendous opportunity as we see the economic opportunity. That's the next tool that I would say that Indiana really has to offer, that currently it fluctuates on a monthly basis. We look at the numbers aggregately, but Burning Glass data that we've seen shows around 85,000 or so postings that are jobs available in the state of Indiana right now in a wide variety of areas. So we have tremendous economic opportunity to be able to offer to our Hoosiers and to future Hoosiers to be able to take advantage of. Just saw an article yesterday, actually, that the governor sent us that shows Indiana's wages are now rising, and that I think that we are 19th in the country as far as wages, the pace of which our wages are rising. And we're tied with, I think, 5 other states for 19th, and that's at 3.1%. And that's due to the growth of these economic opportunities that are available here. And so we have a low cost of living as well to be able to attract individuals. And we chatted about this a little bit last year, of the quality of place and quality of life that our communities are really developing in a very innovative fashion, so that as talented individuals are thinking oftentimes first about where they want to live and then finding a job afterwards, we have then great partners across the state in our communities who are developing these really creative opportunities for people to see places that they want to live and then having jobs to connect into afterwards. And the challenge before us then is making those connections happen.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I tend to think of Indiana as a state that has many assets, but if I had to boil them all down, I could boil them into 3 key issues. The first is what Karen mentioned, which is that we are a state that understands that growing talent is a very important part of how we get to shared prosperity. That unless we actually grow the talent that we have here, that we will not be successful as a state, socially, economically, culturally. And so we're committed to that, whether it's the sort of decade-long effort to improve K-12 education, to the fierce, I think, support for higher education that you see in this state for IU and that place north of here whose name I can't remember, or whether it is simply the idea that employers are really invested in the success of their workers by educating them and building the talent in their companies and their organizations. So we recognize the value of growing talent, but we also recognize the value of attracting talent. And attracting talent is a very important part of success for any community, any state, any country, and any locality. Because part of what attracting talent does is it provides a new kind of vibrancy, a new kind of sense of optimism, I think, that those who've been there for a while can share in and learn from and grow along with. And we are a state that does that, and we've done that very well, even in very challenging times. But the third asset is something that I don't think we spend enough time thinking about in Indiana, which is that we are a state that is, on the one hand, fiercely local, right? We care a lot about where we live and where we're from, but we have a broader perspective on what that means. And you can see that in Bloomington, you can see that in Gary, you can see that in Indianapolis, you can see that in lots and lots of communities in this state, large and small, where that sense of real commitment to place, to where you are, also recognizes that we're part of a broader global community. And I see that all the time in my time in this state. This is a state, I've been here for a decade, and truth be told, I was a cocky East Coaster who probably couldn't have found Indiana on a map 15 years ago. I knew it was somewhere west of Albany. And I now love this state fiercely. I think it is a fantastic place to live and work, to have a family, to grow, to have a business. and to be successful. And the reason is that what people think about where they live and work is very important to their sense of well-being, to their sense of self-worth. And I see that in Indiana. I've lived in 6 states, and I see that in Indiana better than any other state I've lived.
Jim, would you agree you've been a part of the web of this state longer than any of us on this panel, I think?
I'll be 75 next month. It's amazing. Thank you. Michael, your opening statement was brilliant. You so eloquently made the case for why this great university and all that it stands for and all that it aspires to be. And I would make the case that the same is true for IUPUI and for Purdue and Notre Dame and the other great universities in our state. We're blessed, by the way, with extraordinary higher education resources. We're a net importer of students from across the country and around the world. And of course, it's our goal that many of these bright young people who come to study in Indiana will stay in Indiana. The fact of the matter is that Indiana is in a fierce competition for brain power, for investment capital, for jobs, for bright young people with creative ideas. And to the extent that we win that competition, life in Indiana will be better for all of us, and the same broadly speaking. I often use Eli Lilly and Company as an example. Eli Lilly and Company, this remarkable Indiana-built institution, jobs throughout our state. And Lilly Company is a place that touches every single Hoosier every day, whether you're employed there, whether you have an investment in Lilly stock, whether you're a beneficiary of their healthcare products, whether you are the beneficiary of their charitable activities, both through the Family Foundation and through the company foundation. It touches all of us. And the success of Eli Lilly and Company is contingent upon the best young minds, scientists and business people in the world choosing to come be a part of Eli Lilly and Company. And the best young people in the world, like many of you, you will have an option to work in London or Tokyo or Indianapolis or Denver or who knows where. There was a time when Indianapolis competed with Denver and Kansas City and Detroit and Chicago, Columbus, Cincinnati, Louisville. But today that competition is worldwide. The best you will have a chance to work anywhere in the world you will choose. And we want you to live in Indiana. And we want you to lead our enterprises and to make them successful and for them to grow and for them to take advantage of all the opportunities that they may have. And by the way, with a real commitment to give a boost, to lift up those that are most at risk and most vulnerable. And to the degree that a city can do those things, extraordinary things will happen. Our strategy in Indianapolis has been to build a great university, IUPUI. There's not a great city anywhere in the world that doesn't have a great university. To build a great downtown, because when you determine your view of a city, you focus on the downtown, the heart of the city, and to do the best job possible taking care of our children. And my own view is if children have the best panorama range of opportunities, that people care deeply about their development and growth, that by and large everything else will likely take care of itself. And we've focused on education, culture, health, agriculture, food and nutrition, and we've had a focus on sports and fitness. And it's worked. It's transformed our city. And we're a place now that 2,500 companies are doing business from Indianapolis around the world. That we've had extraordinary enterprises from all over the world choose to come to our city, and we've been able to attract really bright young people, and they've thrived there. They've found it a good place to live, to be educated, extraordinary health care, but a friendly, welcoming, positive, optimistic environment. And I echo what my colleagues have said. I'm so proud of the Indiana General Assembly for its financial commitment to public higher education. We've done much better than our perimeter states. And the power of the investment in this university, or IUPUI, or Purdue, Indiana State, Ball State, Southern Indiana, Ivy Tech, the leverage of that investment is remarkable. So how do we win that competition? How do we be a place where the best professors will want to teach here, the best doctors will want to do research at the IU School of Medicine? It's remarkable. The new dean, and not so new now, been there 5 years, but NIH research money has been going this way, and it's been going this way around the rest of the country. And that will make all the difference in the world. So building that environment, but having that inherent commitment to share, to be inclusive, to respect the importance of diversity, and to understand that we're sort of all in this together. You know, Mother Teresa said, if we don't have peace in the world, it's because we forgot we belong to each other. And to build community. Life is a search for a sense of community. How do we come together, lift each other up, make each other better with, you know, there's nothing more rewarding in the world than being a part of an absolutely unselfish group of folks that are committed to the public good, the common good, and extraordinary things happen for everyone. And we've had remarkable leadership, both parties in our state, that have seen the big picture. And we want Indiana to be that place where bright young people want to come. But when they come, they are going to keep their arms around each other, and we're not going to forget the 20% of our kids who are food insecure somehow during the course of the year, and we're going to change that. We're going to make that different. And in the long run, remarkable things will happen.
Thank you. And all of you, I think, are focused in your remarks on thinking about talent and talent development. Talked about vibrancy and optimism and inclusion. And now things get tougher because the seasonally adjusted unemployment rate in our state is about 3.2%, which is essentially full employment. The national rate is around 4.1%. And so it leads, I think, to the question, are some of those new Hoosiers not living in our country at this point? Does our state need an immigration strategy? Do our communities perhaps need immigration strategies? And if so, how can we have a conversation about immigration policy when the national conversation seems so stuck?
So let me first challenge your statistics, Provost, and I'll tell you why. And Blair has heard me talk about this a million times. when you talk about, and for Gary it's 9%, but even that is inaccurate. And I'll tell you, it's inaccurate because you don't count the people who never looked for a job in the first place because they didn't feel like they had the skills to compete. You don't count the people who stopped looking a long, long time ago. And you don't even begin to talk about the underemployed. Our median income is $17,000. Poverty rate's 37%. But to your point, I think there is still, even with those statistics, an opportunity to welcome people into our community. Not necessarily because of the unemployment rate, but because the only way that a community like ours, and you know, Indiana as a whole is prospering, but there are pockets in Gary, pockets in Evansville, in South Bend, in Indianapolis that are doing very, very bad. And the only way that we can, I think, for a city like ours, improve that lot is to get more people in, because one of the biggest challenges that you will see in many of our cities, Terre Haute is having the same problem, is the impact of the property tax caps. And so you need the people to contribute to your tax base.
Mm-hmm. Well, to be globally competitive for sure, we have to think a little bit about those impediments like tax caps, or even things as prosaic as zoning regulations,
Sure.
you know,
Absolutely.
that affect where people will locate. But I'm wondering how the rest of you, I know Secretary Milo, this is at the center of your portfolio, I think.
Absolutely, and we've been looking at a broad swath of opportunities of where we can recruit individuals from, how we can, and I try to be careful about saying that we are constantly attracting individuals as opposed to retaining individuals, so as not to give the impression that we're trying to clip someone's wings from being able to take advantage, that just as Mr. Morris said, that there are opportunities in London and Tokyo, and there are great opportunities to be had here, but I believe that Indiana can compete with all of those cities to be able to offer a tremendous opportunity lifestyle for individuals and families with all ages here. And it's inherent upon us to think about how we are working to attract individuals, whether you have the great fortune to be born a Hoosier or not, to be able to stay here or come here and be a part of all that we have to offer, as well as then ensuring that throughout this process, talking to just what Mayor Karen said, of thinking about some of the people who are not included in some of those statistics, that it's amazing having conversations with Governor Holcomb that will talk through some of the trends that we're seeing in numbers, and he constantly reminds the team of that he's very focused on people, that there are individuals behind those specific numbers, and so thinking about how we're serving those individuals who are unemployed. And my response to that is I'm also concerned about the people who aren't considered in those numbers. So yes, we're focused on those people that those numbers represent, as well as those that it doesn't. And especially thinking about how, when we're seeing the world of work change so rapidly, then how are we connecting people up with those opportunities? If you're working 2 or 3 jobs along the way, how do you take time away from earning in order to get learning, in order to be able to take advantage of what new opportunities would be there? And that's where it's amazing to see our employers engage more and more in this space. That this morning I had the opportunity to be at a graduation ceremony for 2 individuals who work for McDonald's, that they're celebrating their high school graduation and an associate's degree that the individual just received, all because of, they call it archways to opportunity, that they are investing in their employees to be able to move through the economic spectrum and have access to economic mobility. And that's from an employer standpoint. And we're seeing more and more of our Hoosier employers engage in that space because they're seeing the need for workforce and individuals that may come from Indiana or beyond. And now the latest article I read from the Aspen Institute shows that investors are asking the question of employers of how are you investing in your workforce as a part of their decision-making process as to where they're going to be placing their investments. And so it's not an either-or strategy of thinking about how we address attraction elements of being able to recruit people from places, whether it's outside of the state of Indiana, across the United States, or outside of the United States to be able to come to Indiana, that we have to address that piece of things as well as ensure that along the way we are connecting our Hoosiers up that are represented in the numbers, that aren't represented in the numbers, with a constantly shifting world of work as we see automation and artificial intelligence and the global marketplace play a role in that shift that we're seeing in so many different ways.
Yeah, I just want to key off of this point because I think it's so important to hear that, what I was talking about before about this idea of growing and attracting talent, it's like a ratchet, right? The better job you do in growing the talent, the more likely you are to be able to attract talent. And the better job you do attracting the talent, the more you improve the life for the people whose talent needs to continue to grow who are already there. So it keeps moving up in this ratcheting effect that I think is very, very powerful. Look, I have very forceful views on this issue. When I wrote my book in 2015, I thought my ideas about immigration were controversial, and then Donald Trump was elected, and I had realized that my ideas were very mainstream in comparison. My view about immigration is pretty straightforward. We need more immigration in the United States, not less. We need more immigration because of what the evidence shows us. What the evidence shows us is that immigration has been key to our economic and social progress since we have clear quantitative evidence going back at least to the pre-World War II era of the incredible value of immigration to our country. And so whether it is in the percentage of entrepreneurs who are immigrants, to the ways in which our cultural and social enterprises have been enhanced by immigrants. My parents are immigrants. I'm a first-generation college student. I understand this from my own family's experience. This is a land of opportunity, but it's a land of opportunity for people who want to contribute more than they take. And my sense here is that we're at one of the most troubling times, perhaps in American history, when it comes to this conversation about immigration. We have to see education and immigration as integrally interconnected strategies. They reinforce each other. They are key to our success, our prosperity here in the 21st century. Talent's what's going to make us prosperous. We got to grow the talent and we got to attract the talent. That's what we've got to do. And immigration's got to be a key part of that. For a state like Indiana, we've got to look at the full range of talent needs that we have as a state. Blair's in a perfect position to do this from her vantage point. Seeing where the talent needs are, they exist at all levels, the low end, the middle end, and the high end. Seeing the opportunities of where we have the capacity right now to grow that talent through our educational institutions and filling those needs should be our first priority. But a parallel priority that should come quickly behind that is if we can't grow that talent, we should attract it, and we should have deliberate strategies for attracting that talent to fill those gaps so that we get ahead of other states, so that we actually can prosper. So immigration's got to be a proactive part of our strategy, not something that we react to, not something that we sit back and wait for the federal government to get its act together. We've actually got to attract more talent because attracting talent is going to be key to our success as a state.
Well, I want to just interject on behalf of universities everywhere that universities are huge talent attractors from around the world. Sure. And on the Open Door Society statistics for this past year showed that there were over 1 million students from all around the world who came to the United States to study because we have a world-renowned educational system of higher education. But in 2017, 2018, for the first time in 12 years, the number of international students coming to the United States as beginners fell. And I'm a little worried in terms of our overall national talent attraction strategy if our universities are hampered in being able to bring talented people from overseas, really the most talented people from those 150 countries that the president mentioned at the beginning of this panel.
You know, one of the keys, by the way, just to add a quick coda to this, is that so our national immigration strategy has been tilted primarily towards family unification. I think that's really, really important. I think family unification is a key part of our American values. It defines sort of our compassion, our shared sense of community as Americans, and so family unification is really important. But so is talent, and somehow it's been treated as a zero-sum game. You either have a talent-based strategy or you have a family unification-based strategy. I think you've got to have both as part of your national immigration strategy. In countries like Canada and Australia and others, neither of them have models that we should adopt, but we should learn from their experiences and adapt it to our context, because those models actually see those two things as interconnected, and family unification and talent should be shared parts of our strategy, not seen as in diametrically opposed forces.
Well, along with that tilting too, though, you've seen this sense that if people come, you know, I have to ask, if I'm an immigrant, will I be welcome? You know,
I think if you're an international student, you have to ask the same thing.
If I'm an international student, and so when you say that the number has gone down, there are places, universities in other countries where I can ask that question and the answer is a resounding yes. It's not that the university won't be welcoming, but it's the country as a whole. When you hear about the rhetoric, and you know, you have to understand what type of news is broadcast outside of the country, then that sends a, you know, at best it's a question mark, right? And people would say, well, why would I go to the United States and feel unwelcome when I can go to Canada, when I can go to Europe, when I can go to any other place and feel like I'm a welcome student?
It is a concern. I was on a webinar with people we had admitted as international students just yesterday morning, and it was one of their biggest questions. How welcoming is the country right now? How welcoming is your community?
Well, and I would raise the question along with that of how much is a perception that we're communicating rather than the reality that exists. Right. Just as the mayor said, that when you come to the campuses, I think that there's a great sense of welcome, and in many of our communities as well, not only a welcome, but a celebration of that diversity. And that's where we are seeing thriving communities, because that's a key element of a community that is attracting talent, and a recognition from community leaders, from state leaders, as well as to celebrating that diversity as a way of attracting talent.
Well, as you think about this immigration conversation and the connection to students, I'd welcome any thoughts you have as we move forward. And I want to ask a question that I think Jim, you and Karen, you, speaking of Canada, probably have some pretty informed views on, and that is, we've been in a lot of discussions about tariffs lately. And if you think about the tariff discussions we've been having and the effect on global trade and the Indianapolis businesses or the businesses in Gary or the whole region, that what was the conversation like in Canada a couple days ago when you were having it?
So we had the opportunity, and first I was very fortunate to accompany Governor Holcomb to Canada on a trade mission along with Secretary Schellinger. And the topic, the most talked about topic of conversation among all of the people, because most of them were from the business community, was Section 232, the tariffs on steel and aluminum. And of course, them knowing that I was from Gary, and you know, the flagship for U.S. Steel is right out of my office window, they immediately assumed that I would be supported. And my position has always been, is that you can't cut off your nose to spite your face. So you have to look at it as a long-term question. You know, they may be good in the short term, tariffs, but if you are impacting those who use foreign steel, if you are increasing the cost of other things in the process of imposing those tariffs, and that's what we already see happening. I was talking to one of our waste companies in the city, and he said the cost of dumpsters and the cost of material for dumpsters has gone up just in the last 2 weeks. So we really do have to look at that from a global standpoint, and you don't want to win over the course of 30 days to ultimately lose over the course of 6 months to a year to multiple years.
And looking at a perspective from a jobs front, in conversations that I have with our steel companies, that there is a need for more employees right now. And so as we are looking at the larger strategy and the broader picture of what we see there, that we were having a conversation about a tremendous program that is housed at one of the steel companies called Steelworker for the Future, where they are paying the bulk of the costs, the tuition costs for an individual to receive an associate's degree. And our conversation was about how tools that the state of Indiana is creating around career certificates marry up with their program so that we are getting more people connected with those educational opportunities as a way for them to attract people into the vacancies that they see right now. So in the broad context of how this affects the steel workers as well, there is need as it currently stands.
Back to the earlier point about immigration, Jamie talked about since World War I. I would say we have 240 years of a successful immigration policy that's built this great country.
Well, and this great university, I will say.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth.
I'm so sorry.
And probably more eloquently, but indeed, I can't speak for Michael, but nobody has worked harder than Michael and Lori and others here to put a welcoming face on Indiana University. We've worked very hard all around the world to tell students that they're welcome here. We want them to come, that they'll be appreciated, respected, honored, and that's our policy. And I do think Indiana, there's probably not a stated policy, but Indiana is a very welcoming place. And Karen, I worry a lot about the kids that are falling between the cracks. That's the most heartbreaking notion to think about. But anybody that is prepared can come to Indiana University. There is a combination of economic support. The same would be true for Purdue or IUPUI. There is a way for anybody to have an IU-Purdue education. The same with Ivy Tech. And I think, my hat's off to the governor. He's worked very hard at trying to put incentives in place and make it possible for anybody who wants to pursue that has that opportunity. And, you know, that's saying we've got a really welcome, open front door. Please come and be a part of our community, and we will support you, and we'll go to the end of the world to help you be successful. I don't know how we do a better job of getting to the most vulnerable kids at risk, who, if they find their way to what we have to offer, have the same chance to do extraordinary things as any other child has. So, by the way, I'm a free trader. I learned that from you, Dick Lugar. I despise bad behavior, and bad behavior sometimes complicates free trade. People take advantage and don't see the big picture for the long haul, what's best for all. But I think, you know, Eric asking Blair to do this, to say, your job is to tell the story of Indiana all over the world. And we have 85,000 jobs. But, you know, why is emphasis coming here with, 2,500 new jobs from India? Why is Salesforce coming here? And why are they having enormous success in getting people from San Francisco or Austin to move here? Well, they once they get here, they just love being in Indiana. They love the opportunity. They're welcome. They're greeted. But the reason the business leaders are making the decision to come is because our higher education institutions are producing such extraordinary graduates from informatics here, from engineering at Purdue, from cyber engineering here. If you do the 200 miles around Indianapolis, covering the whole state, but going into Louisville, going into Columbus, Ohio, the brain pool of really bright young people who, by and large, represent Midwestern values and care about community. The talent pool here is enormous, and that's why these folks have come. And the talent pool is enormous because we've been willing to make the investment in training and preparing people for these opportunities. You know, prosperity opportunities, that whole notion, where can I have the good life for my family, and where can I be a fulfilled human being? We have a lot to offer here.
And I would just add another piece onto that specific mention, talking about Infosys and the tech ecosystem that has grown predominantly around central Indiana, but we're seeing it expand beyond that, that it was an awesome opportunity to be with all the great folks at the Center of Excellence for Women in Technology last week, and to talk with women who are interested in the tech sphere, and explaining that there's jobs beyond just what we think about of tech, of being coding and software development and the like, but specifically to that point of opportunity in Indiana, that research shows that for women in tech, that you can earn $102 to the male counterpart of $100 in Indianapolis. So women are out earning men in this space in Indianapolis, and Indiana is the #2 state that is growing as far as technology jobs across the country. That it is amazing to see more and more of these opportunities growing. And just as Chairman Morris said, that there's a reason for all of those things that we're seeing. The business leaders are seeing the business case that can be made, and the employees are seeing the family life and the lifestyle opportunity that can be made here in Indiana.
The governor has become acquainted with a fellow in California, a venture capitalist, who has set up training programs in 8 California prisons.
Yes.
And these are programs, while the person is still incarcerated, to prepare them for really high-paying IT jobs, coding beyond that. And they're doing it in 8 prisons. And next week they'll dedicate, the man has chosen Indiana as the next place to pursue his interest in this subject. And we'll dedicate the program at the Indiana Women's Prison as the first place outside of California to do this. And it's, you know, I've really been impressed with when the governor talks about workforce development. You know, we got too damn many people in prison, and the opportunity, forgive my language, Dick Lugar gave me the bad eye there. But, you know, there are a lot of people that, given the opportunity and the training and the preparation, can have a wonderful second chance and be great citizens. And I'm grateful that looking at every corner where there's an opportunity for people to be employed and be good citizens.
Well, I'd like to just ask one question, and I finish the panel every year with this question, which is, we've made a big bet at Indiana University on the School of Global and International Studies, and we are deeply committed to global engagement. Is there something we should be thinking about that you, from where you sit, think we can do particularly well from where we sit here in this state as a university committed to those values? Or are there issues of foreign policy that you think should be on the table that haven't been on the table as you think about the places that you sit here in our state?
Well, from a somewhat selfish standpoint, the opportunity that our students have here at IU to interact, that I loved hearing the statistics that President McRobbie shared about the international experiences that the students are having, to the extent that you can share that message of what your experience is here in Indiana, the opportunity that you have seen here, then we would greatly appreciate sharing that story more. That some of the challenge / opportunity that we have as Hoosiers is, I think, part of our personality. We're very humble people. And so we don't always tell our story as much as we could because we're so focused on just accomplishing the next job, the next mission, rather than feeling as though we're tooting our own horn. But there's so much to share and an opportunity to be had here in Indiana that I love how the governor will often say the time for being humble is over, that Indiana's done with being humble, and we're going to share our story more. There's only so much of that I can do and that our government leaders can do, but when people hear it from their peers and hear it particularly from students that you're interacting with in those foreign settings where you're getting to have study abroad, that please help us share the message of what Indiana has to offer. And I think that you'll find also that as you think about that a little bit too, it forces you to really appreciate so much more and builds a sense of positivity even further about the opportunity that we have here. And so I will thank you in advance for your assistance in helping spread the word about Indiana opportunity.
Build Hoosier diplomacy.
That's right.
Yeah, you know, so I'm a member of the Council on Foreign Relations Task Force on the Future of the U.S. Workforce. Our report's coming out in 2 weeks. And without revealing the conclusions, I will say that the task force has focused really tightly on this question of the future of work in the United States and how we're actually going to develop and deploy the workforce of the 21st century given the changing nature of work. Schools like this one, I think, are providing a very important service to the state and to the country, because what you're preparing people for is not just jobs, but you're preparing them for a set of experiences over the course of a work lifetime and a personal lifetime that is deeply immersed in the sense that we are a global community, that this is a global context. And that understanding, whether it be through an understanding of geopolitical issues or a richer understanding of language or whatever the factors may be, is extremely important to our country and our state here in the 21st century. The future of work is going to be radically different than it is now. Human work is going to be different, and our ability to understand that global context is going to be a very important part of being successful in that future workforce.
I would add that, particularly under Governor Holcomb's leadership, there has been a real effort to wrap our arms around the opioid epidemic. And we've also been leaders in just addressing addiction as a state. I think that the school is especially poised to bring all of our parts together and to show how we can provide that leadership on a global basis, because we're not the only part of the world that's having the challenge. They're having it all over. And so to the extent that what we can look at what we've done in public health, what we've done in the legal system, what we've done in healthcare, and how we can pull all of that together and really export it to other parts of the world, I think there's a tremendous opportunity for us to synthesize that for other parts of the world.
Well, we completely agree with you on that. We are investing about $50 million in the grand challenge of substance abuse disorder. And we've also put a lot of time and thought into how we can address those issues and others like them, including the displacement and feeling of being left behind in the rural parts of our state.
Absolutely.
And so I think universities are always a part of that piece of the solution for big, grand challenges that we face as a country.
Lauren, just my concluding comment. Universities are great places to prepare people for their economic well-being and their livelihood and their future. But great universities are places that prepare people to be good citizens, to be good parents, to be good teachers. And we can't, Indiana University always must have the focus that we're preparing people to lead a state, to have great lives, to be fulfilled, to enjoy all that life has to offer. But also, you know, what a gift to spend 4 years or more at a place with students from 150 countries, from every state in the Union, and to have the whole range of experiences available for you within, right in your backyard. And my fervent hope is that we are a place that encourages our students to do well in the classroom, but to understand the importance of relationships and friendships and partnerships and leadership, that we see the big, big picture, that we hopefully, you all will go out and make a huge difference in our city, our state, and our country, and our world, and you'll have that opportunity because of what was given to you and made available to you here.
Well, thank you to all of our panelists. You all are just wonderful and inspiring as we think about the ways in which we stay engaged as a university with the world. And I'd like to turn it over to our dean for the final word.
Thank you very much. Everybody, please give a round of applause. Every year, this last panel adds just an incredibly important dimension to what these 2 days are about. And every year, it's the highlight. So thank you very much again. If you missed any of our panels, check it out online. All of the panels are have been live streamed and now archived and available online. If you have some feedback for us, let us know. We want to hear what you liked especially and what you'd like to see more of as well. We talked over the last couple of days about some pretty tough challenges. But I'll also say I think we saw a glimpse of the possibilities as well. You saw people with different backgrounds, from different academic disciplines, from different professions, with different political perspectives, thinking seriously about hard problems, and what it provides is a glimpse of what's possible when people come together diligently to work on hard problems. And we have no better example of that than our conference co-conveners, Senator Lugar and Congressman Hamilton, and thank you again for convening us once more. And the last thing I'll say is you didn't only glimpse the possibilities of the future to address the tough challenges that we face, but you also are glimpsing your own future possibilities. As people who will one day be up on this stage or on stages like it, as a kind of person who people look to for their expertise, for their wisdom, and also for inspiration. So on that note, thanks again. We'll see you next year.